Hi everyone, Namani. I'm Keri Hopeward from the University of South Australia, and I'm going to be talking with you today about our project Living Lightly Locally, Smarter and Stronger Through Citizen Science, which was a project that has taken place on the lands of the Kaurna, Peramunk and Ngarrindjeri people. So I'd like to extend my respect to Elders past, present and emerging, as well as to any First Nations people that might be joining us today. And when we think about what it means to live lightly locally, it's obviously really important to acknowledge the role of First Nations people in caring for country since time immemorial. You might notice there's a difference in the name of the project that I've used there in the acknowledgement to the main title, where I've called it Living Lightly Locally for Regenerative Regions. That's because the first part of the project, which was a pilot project, was funded under the federal government's citizen science grant round. And we're now in hiatus as we write up those results and analyse them and embark on a co-design phase through the Race for 2030 Cooperative Research Centre. So it's an exciting time for the project, but I also want to emphasise that, like Nina, you're not alone. This is very much not a traditional citizen science project at all. It was very much focused on education and thinking about ways that social science and even art might be able to be used within citizen science, so quite an experiment. This is not a project I've undertaken on my own by any means. This is just the research team. You can see it's quite a multidisciplinary project. I've tried to list people's areas of expertise there, but I couldn't even fit on this slide all our different amazing project partners. So we had Phil Roteman from City of Burnside, Christy Spire from Green Adelaide, Crystal Chambers from Australian Red Cross Climate Ready Communities program, Dana Miles from Hills and Florio. I really hope I'm not missing anyone, but also all of our incredible Living Lightly Locally legends, as we call them, who are doing incredible things on the ground and shared their stories and experiences with us during the project. So what is Living Lightly Locally? Well, it's a free 12-month adult research and education program designed to help encourage people to live more sustainably and regeneratively while building more resilient and regenerative local regions. We also wanted to look at the following research questions, which are quite long, and I know this we haven't been given a lot of time for this talk, but we were interested in what are the key barriers and motivators for individual, community and environmental behaviour change? How could citizen science and things like goal setting, pledges and other theories of environmental behaviour change be best applied in a program to support individual and community environmental behaviour change? And then also, what sort of differences and similarities emerge when you start to compare more conventional quantitative measures like those that we might conventionally associate with citizen science projects with more qualitative narrative approaches to data gathering like storytelling and those sorts of approaches. So the program actually kicks off with our participants complete a fairly conventional ecological footprint assessment, and then we guide them through this process that we've called Envisaging Ecotopia. We're writing it up in a paper now. Very much inspired by how many people have seen Damon Gamo's work, Regenerating Australia 2040. He refers to it as fact-based dreaming. So we introduce participants to the science around planetary boundaries and constraints that we have to work with if we're going to live regeneratively on this planet into the future, and then we guide them through a visualisation as to what their local region would look like at a time in the future where they've actually managed to achieve this. And then that's captured by an artist, in this case the amazing activist artist Brenna Quinlan. If you haven't heard of her work, go ahead and check it out. And then we guide participants through a year-long journey where we introduce them to a topic each month. And we created a whole bunch of resources to share in this educational program, including around about a half-hour documentary featuring members of the research team talking about the science, activists that are quite well known like Damon himself and Helena Norberg-Hodge from Local Futures Network, but then also local legends who are doing things on the ground. And the idea was that participants in the program would be inspired to set and share goals for change relating to the topic, and then also share with us their journeys over time and what were the barriers and enablers that they came across throughout that journey. So the key outcomes from this first very much pilot phase has been the development of 12 30-minute professionally edited videos. That was quite a task, I have to say, with no prior training in this area, but I am proud of what we managed to create. We've got in-depth local case studies, which I've described to you before, featured in those videos. We also established our data collection and goal setting tools and curated extra resources for participants. We've delivered 2 local pilots in each of our local government areas, so Mount Barker and Burnside, and we were able to have 50 participants in the program overall. Sounds like a lot, but it was a much smaller number of people who stuck with the program throughout the entire 12 months and participated in every single mechanism that we asked them to, which was incredible. So we have a core cohort of rich case studies of engaged change. Is that... oh, sorry, I thought that was time. And some of the participants enjoyed it so much that they even enrolled to do a second year and continue the journey on, which I think is really fantastic. We were also able to get a Masters by Research program up called Changing the World for Good, Mapping the Long-Term Impacts of Adult Community Environmental Education Programs in South Australia, which has just been submitted for examination, which is super exciting, by Matilda Rains. And that was looking at what can we learn from other environmental programs that have been being run in the state, and how can they feed into the co-design phase that we're moving into now for the second phase of Living Lightly to improve on it. In terms of findings, we were asked to reflect on that. The visioning process that we used was highly effective. I think it was absolutely inspirational for a lot of the participants in the program. People became somewhat evangelical about it. We had one participant saying, I've stuck it on the back of my front door so that every single person who comes to my house has to ask me about it as they leave, and I get to tell them about the program. We also were able to run this exercise in a variety of different formats beyond just the program. So we were invited to present at the Planet Local Summit last year in Bristol about this project as an Australian case study of localisation. And we ran this exercise there, and there were people from all over the world participating in it. And we thought it was really interesting that despite local differences, there were so many similar elements to this vision that was created. We also found that there are definitely some issues that we're all well aware of with some of the more established tools for measuring environmental impact. And we found that people had a tendency to believe the quantitative tools even when they were grounded in critique and even when they contradicted their own personal experiences. So we had a person, for example, who had made some huge changes in their own personal life, and it wasn't at all reflected in their ecological footprint assessment at the end. And their response was, oh no, I haven't been doing enough, and instead we were trying to emphasise, look at all the changes you have made. So it's really important that we do, I think, put more value on people's stories and people's own lived experience. So I could go through all of these. I think you've probably had a chance to read a lot of them. But in terms of reflections and moving forward, at the moment we're working very much on streamlining the mechanisms for data gathering, because you can imagine over that many topics, it became quite complicated for the people involved. And we want to really focus on people's stories of change and in training participants in storytelling from the outset so that they're more confident in telling their stories and in sharing their stories, so we can build in that sort of the fair element of citizen science more, because people need to be confident before they're willing to share it far and wide. Thank you.